And here we are. It's Bosco.
What's up, Zach? That was a interesting hello there.
I don't know.
You testing out your radio DJ voice?
Coming to you live from the shed. Yeah, you know. I figured I might as well try some different voices, you know. You feel me?
Well, I think it's been working out so far. Yeah. I like the little intros that you have for each
my
segment,
little intros, okay. So how you doing, man?
Not bad. I was gonna tell you, last night I was drinking a little bit of wine, and I was looking for a particular movie, and I went to my Hulu account. I don't use my Hulu account very often, but it's like tied to my Spotify, so I went and checked it out, and I was like looking at and I wanted to I wanted to update my email, so I went to it and I updated my email, and then it was like, hey, do you want to sign out of all devices? And then like I looked at it, and it said there was 25 devices
freeloaders
hooked up to my Hulu account. Well, I know of like two, my computer and my Xbox, and then my sister has two of my sisters each use it, plus my family's TV, so that's about 5, 6 that I could think of
these other
that I've given it to. Yeah, so it's about 20 unaccounted for devices. I assumed my sisters, because I gave them the password. I assumed that they were signing on, like when they go out somewhere or go out with friends, be like, I got Hulu. Here you go. Give them my login info, my secret password.
Well, look at
but
you.
I purged them all, and I felt so powerful doing it.
Oh, look at you, little tyrant.
I was like, enough. No more of a welfare state. No Hulu welfare state.
No Hulu for all.
No. I felt like the Baron of Hulu. Just
Speaking
enough.
of which, have you heard about all the protesting for Medicare for all that's going across the U.S. right now? There's a bunch of marches and shit like
really?
that. Yeah.
I did not hear about that.
And I also heard of a general strike in October. For basically
general labor strike.
Yeah, general labor.
Well,
strike.
like in the beginning of May, there's May Day, which is supposed to be like a general labor strike.
Right. Okay.
I didn't even know about that until I was going to school at UCSC, and there were like big. Like, that was a big thing there. There was, like, signs everywhere. And I'm like, wait, this is an actual thing. Like, I looked into it, and it's, like, an actual thing. May Day. General labor strike on.
May Day. We're going down, brother.
All right, you want to do some addendum?
Addendum. Let's do some addendums. All right,
to the Olympic Village story.
Yeah, so at first I also thought that we mentioned that there was
cardboard beds that were supposed to, it was posted online as being like, it was obviously misrepresented.
They were billed as like sex,
yeah, so two people couldn't cohabitate the same bed.
People were having sex,
but it seems like really what it was just like a cheap way of setting up a lot of beds really quick. Yeah. And there's like, other videos posted online of the athletes who were actually there.
They were like jumping on them, and they're like, yep, no, it's not anti-sex.
They seem pretty sturdy. Yeah. So, that might have just been misrepresented by whoever got the photo. You know how news is, stuff online and news is like, rumors start easily. And then once it's out, it's hard to
put that back in the bottle. So yeah, we were wrong. Don't believe that. Fake news. Fake news. All right.
Okay. We'll give a little bit of a update on the FaZe cryptocurrency scam. Yeah. Coffeezilla, the investigator on YouTube, posted what he claims is the final
Heil Coffeezilla.
the final chapter in this story, in which he did a little bit more investigating after receiving the cease and desist. Yeah. And it looks like that this character Sam Pepper, who originally started as a prank YouTuber, the worst kind of YouTuber.
And apparently, I was actually watching the replay of it on Hassan's stream today. And apparently that guy Sam Pepper was like, he did like a lot of those like shitty like fake pranks and shit like that on YouTube that used to be super popular, and actually like sexually assaulted some people. So
I remember hearing about that a long time ago, and I hadn't heard of Sam Pepper since then until this story.
That's what he's been doing.
His pranks were like, pranking girls by going up and kissing them. Like, so weird. So cringy.
Yeah.
But
self-report.
It seems like he was trying to reach out to CoffeeZilla to like clear his name, but he seemed to kind of be full of shit in what he was saying.
He seemed to be very full
of
shit.
And he's since fled the country and he's back in the UK.
He sold his Tesla.
But he's claiming innocence. They're all still claiming him innocence, but it seems like the masterminds, it seems like FaZe, the brand itself, the organization,
it had nothing to do. It was
or at least wasn't aware of it, and it was more between.
It was sorry, go on.
It was more between FaZe K, Sam Pepper, and a manager of some kind. That kind of orchestrated this, and I'm sure any future updates on this might be like legal proceedings, but right now
I think that's about about it.
It seems like the story's kind of reached a little bit of a conclusion, but anything else I could see, like I said, would be any legal proceedings, a result of legal proceedings in regards to that.
Someone going behind bars.
You know what was funny when I was listening to this? You mentioned to me that on a YouTube video we received our first piece of hate mail in regards to cryptocurrency, didn't we?
Yeah.
Someone was mad about
bot, it was probably a bot. It seemed like a bot message about like crypto. It's like, follow me on my Discord.
Really?
It just picked up that we had crypto in the title.
Oh, I thought you said it was like hate mail or something.
No, that's what I first thought it was, but it was just like a bot response.
Oh, you're telling me we didn't get any hate mail?
No.
Well,
we can it's still on YouTube, so we're waiting for the hate mail.
I'll write ourselves hate mail. I'll go on my alt account.
Don't say that on the mic, dude. You're supposed to save that for the illusion.
These guys are the worst.
So
they don't know anything about cryptocurrency.
They don't know shit. All right. Well, you want to get into the first?
Let's get into
piece of news?
To the stories this week.
Well, this is gonna be my corporate slam piece. Corporate slam, it's slam piece.
Yeah.
All right.
Slam those corporations.
Slam piece.
Shut the door on them.
Shut the door on them in their face.
Padlock it.
Padlock it. Lock them up in the top of the prison. Below the prison. Right? That's what they say?
I don't know.
All right. So there's a Disney class action. Lawsuit. I figured I'd shift my attentions away from Jeff Bezos and Amazon because I feel like I've been covering just a lot of that, So I wanted to. We'll tackle another huge
We'll go for one of the other four horsemen of the corporate apocalypse.
Yeah.
You got Amazon. You got
Disney.
Google,
and Apple.
Apple?
Yeah,
did you call Apple?
Headed, of course, by...
I was going to say Nestle.
Yeah, Nestle's pretty bad, especially with what they do, like stealing people's water and then just straight up bottling it. Yeah, they're one of the worst companies. There's so many. There's so many. So
you're going after Disney this week.
So, I was brought to this again. I highly recommend all of you to follow More Perfect Union on YouTube. They post a lot of really good videos about current labor movements. One that I'll be covering next week, which is a huge coal miners strike in Alabama, I believe. Have you heard about that?
No.
It's huge. It's pretty damn big. So I get a lot of information from there. So if you're curious, there's short videos. They talk about current labor movements. There's an update to the Frito-Lay story where a man got shocked and
to the Frito-Lay warehouse you're talking about?
Yes, the Frito-Lay warehouse story I covered a couple weeks ago. Terrible working conditions. A man was shocked while operating some door. They took him to the hospital 45 minutes away, passing 4 other hospitals because they had a contract with a specific hospital. He goes into the hospital. Basically, the doctor says, "Oh yeah, you're completely fine." The next day, he's like having trouble getting up. He was forced to come into work. They didn't fucking give a shit.
Damn.
And then apparently the guy ended up, ipso facto, he had to take some sick time off because the company wouldn't just give him time off, and he ended up getting a serious liver disease that's linked to being electrocuted.
Wow.
Yep. So terrible scumbag company again. Boycott Frito-Lay. I'm doing. They're also owned by PepsiCo, so stay away from those products if you can. If you give a shit.
Stay away from Pepsi.
Yeah, I mean it's not that hard. Fuck Pepsi. But I think Mountain
you know
Dew
what
is
I
owned
was
by Pepsi.
I was thinking about this as we were driving out to Yosemite this past weekend. Right after you get through the Altamont Pass, there's tons of warehouses out there. This was a scorching hot day too. Thankfully, we're in the air-conditioned car. But I was looking at those warehouses right there, baking in the sun, and I was thinking about what you were talking about, and I was like, man, if there's no air conditioning in those warehouses, that must be hell to be in there working.
Yeah, and this guy got fucking electrocuted, dude. My fucking God. Where's the decency, damn it? Is just what I fucking think, but whatever. I'm just a stupid lib. Anyway, so
stupid lib.
Stupid lib. At least that's what my dad says. So Disney has a class action lawsuit. So look, I'm gonna reiterate, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, okay? I just I tried to wrap my head around this because it's a little bit complicated. But basically Disneyland employees are claiming that they don't earn a living wage, and that after it took a year and a half for this court to be allowed in the Orange County Superior Court to certify as a class action lawsuit. It took about a year and a half. It was filed in 2019. So, damn, long time.
I mean, yeah, that's so big things like that take a minute to get rolling in court.
So 5 resort workers allege that Disney violated Measure L, which requires Anaheim resort businesses that receive tax subsidies need to pay employees a living wage. First it was $15 an hour, now it's $17, right? And it was like increasing $1. It's still not enough, but it's a start. It's a start of a good I think that's a good policy,
especially because this Disneyland's receiving taxpayer money.
Right. So
it's like how they say socialism for companies.
It's socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for the poor.
That's not the one I was looking for. It's not necessarily an expression, but people have been saying that a lot of companies that rally against socialism receive the benefits, not necessarily of socialism, but they receive tax benefits. Like subsidies is the most obvious one.
Yeah, totally. So many of their workers are employed by Disney. Others work for contractors such as Sodexo and Sodexo Magic, which operates in restaurants and cafes all over the park. So in 1997, Disney received $510 million in resort bonds, which helped build a parking garage in 1997. Here's the specifics of Measure L. So $15 minimum at least, raises by $1 a year until 2022 when it reaches 18. After that, it's based off of a cost of living index, right? So it keeps getting updated. The lawsuit claims that Anaheim is using tax dollars to pay off construction bonds for this parking garage, right? So Disney keeps the revenue from the garage, and it will own it soon once the construction bonds are paid off, right? Apparently they had to pay about like $1 per parking pass or whatever, but 85% of workers at Disneyland made below $15 an hour. So the big,
are we talking like the actors that do the performances, or the people that are like staff of
just all the they're called cast members, all the cast members at Disneyland.
That includes like custodians and your waiters at the restaurants.
So 85% of union workers made below $15 minimum wage.
85%.
Yep.
At Disneyland.
At Disneyland.
And Disneyland drops billions to buy Star Wars at Marvel.
Oh, trust me. I'll tell you why it's more insidious later. Got info from an ex-Disney employee. Yeah. So this will be good. So the big question here is, do Anaheim taxpayers subsidize Disney? That's the big question here, right? Because if it's found that they do in court, that means that Disney needs to be paying their employees more, right? So, but the thing is that there were plenty of stories of people living in cars working at Disney, like legitimately, like. So
it's not clear whether or not Disney is actually taking subsidies from the city for Disneyland.
I'll get into that.
Because it would make sense if they did. Because at first, as you're telling me about this, I'm like, why is Disneyland getting subsidized? And then I'm like, well, I guess it makes sense for like bringing tourism into the city and what. I guess it's a benefit for the city. I think what the lawsuit is that Anaheim and Disney are in cahoots, and that that they're using taxpayer dollars to help pay off the
that
city
bond.
of Anaheim, the government there.
Right. So let's go into a little bit about what happened during that thing that happened last year. You know that thing? The thing that lasted, that started in March?
No idea what you're talking about.
Right? Yeah, you don't know? You know the thing.
I have no idea.
You know the pandemic?
I'm living under a rock. I just got back from a private island.
Oh, okay.
Funded by Disney.
You're like remember that story like early in the pandemic where Jared Leto was on an island and he came back and he had no idea what was going on.
That's funny. Yeah. What's happening?
He was on a private at some retreat, like, I was getting all zen and I came out and I'm like, what's happening, man? So a lot of workers, they laid off 28,000 workers because of COVID. And Disney also got $500 million in taxpayer aid during the pandemic through the CARES Act. And ideally that money would be used to keep workers on payroll, help that, but of course not. Of course,
shouldn't they just be able to keep themselves afloat through their Disney Plus streaming service?
That's what I'm saying, dude.
Especially during the pandemic where everybody's locked in, and those streaming services all got a big
just
boom.
Pay them, and then you won't look like fucking insane people. Like, I don't want to throw around the term Nazis, but from what I've heard, how workers were treated there, it's Nazi-ish.
Hakuna Matata.
So Disney tricked workers in April that were laid off by offering them similar roles at lower pay and fewer hours with no benefits. So workers who signed on new deals were tricked, and they gave up their seniority. All because a lot of these workers had to come back in, and there were people who've been working there 15, 20 years, and they came back and they were making the same as someone who just started that day.
Damn.
Yeah,
wow.
Fucked up, right?
That's unfortunate.
And so, also, kind of a shitty mood. They're filling roles with subcontractors instead of original staff to replace certain staff that were maybe disabled or, staff that they wanted to get rid of. So yeah, they used the pandemic to get rid of these certain workers, basically, and also, not have to pay people at their seniority rate. They cut a third of the custodial staff during a time when the place needed to be sanitized more than ever. So right now they're negotiating a contract, right? Alongside this.
With who? Who they're negotiating a contract
with Disney, the union in Disney. The union is. I just Disney feels like it's like one of the biggest companies in the world, right?
I would definitely assume they could drop billions of dollars to buy perhaps the most valuable IP that exists, Star Wars.
Right.
And
then Marvel, look what they did with fucking Marvel and all this shit. And you're like, you figure that they must have enough money But the Disneyland, the so-called happiest place on earth,
family
friendly place, is built on fucking misery. So let me go into a little bit of
it's all a fairy tale.
Oh yeah. Well, speaking of which, let me go into what it's like being a worker there.
Okay.
So I talked to my friend on Call of Duty.
Okay. We're the greatest conversations happening.
Yeah, we're great conversations
online
happen.
Through Call of Duty.
So I took some notes of some of the things he told me. So when Disney did, like I said before, Disneyland, like the people who work certain attractions, they're called attractions, not rides there. Except the only one is Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. That was like one of the corny jokes he said he heard a lot. It was like, oh, the only ride at Disneyland is Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It's stupid.
My favorite.
It's a good one. It's weird.
I've never been on it.
It's
I'm
weird.
Just kidding.
No, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. He like goes to hell.
What?
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's one of the weird older Disney rides there. So when someone's working at a certain place, like in front of people, they're considered on stage. Well, and so to maintain this illusion that, you know, Disney thinks they need, you know, for the kids, there's no drinking water while on stage. They're not allowed to drink water in fucking Los Angeles heat on stage because, you know, it ruins the illusion. Right? Apparently, I think that rule has changed somewhat. But at the time that my friend was working, about 2 years ago, that was the case. So people had to be bumped out in order to, you know, drink water. Yeah. Crazy.
So, like, if you're, like, a character, like, let's say you're being Snow White. Snow White can't have a drink of water. But that applies to everybody across the board? It applies to everybody. Even like, the rides operators?
That's exactly what I'm talking about, dude. So, like, certain rides operators have to wear, like, you know the Tower of Terror ride?
Yeah,
the Tower of Terror ride.
Apparently, it's one of the more popular.
Well, now it's the like Guardians of the Galaxy ride. But I liked it better when it was the Twilight Zone because, you know me personally, I love the Twilight Zone.
The Tower of Terror?
Yeah.
I thought it was based off of like the Disney movie with, Eddie Murphy, like the Haunted Mansion.
No, that's the Haunted Mansion. Right? No, the Tower of Terror before it became the Guardians of the Galaxy ride was based off of the Twilight Zone.
Really?
Yeah. That was actually the first time I learned about the
Twilight Zone.
How
is it based off the Twilight? It's owned by Twilight Zone's owned by CBS.
I don't know, dude. I don't know. I'm just telling you that's what it was originally based on. But in there, they used to have to wear like these big, like, think of like old school bellhops and shit like that.
Yeah, like an elevator operator.
Yeah, and these hot ass outfits they had to be in, right? They like because they had to be specific to not break the kayfabe, as we like to call.
Is it air conditioned in the Tower of Terror?
Some areas are, some areas aren't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot. And think about the people that have to work outside too. My buddy said that he worked at the Radiator Springs, which is like the Cars Land, and he's like that was the best area to work because he was able to wear shorts. So sometimes you luck out based on your assignment. So where I started finding interesting was when he started talking about like their personal grooming, right? So hairstyle, hair color was all controlled, right? There was a lot of very strict rules, right? I think hair couldn't go past the ears. I think was for guys, and then for women.
Already, I'm out.
Yeah. There was tattoos couldn't be visible. Forced to wear long sleeves to cover up tattoos.
I'm out too there.
Yeah,
I'm out. So far, I haven't checked any box.
Nail color had to be complementary to skin. Approved facial length couldn't be longer than a quarter inch. Yeah, facial hair. Facial hair couldn't be more than a quarter inch.
You're out.
And if you had a mustache and like a goatee, if it didn't connect, then you could only wear the mustache.
You're out.
Yeah, I'm out. So
Damn, Disneyland rejects
you had a
right
6
here.
o'clock shadow. You had to go and shave.
That's my favorite type of
Hair color. Nothing, no crazy,
no
like,
reds,
yeah,
no like bright reds or pinks or blues
or blue,
It
purples.
has to be like natural.
Yeah. So you're sent home for the day if it's not fixable. If you have something that's not fixable.
Yeah.
He said he knew girls who worked there who had like a bunch of wigs and stuff like that. Yeah, it was crazy. So apparently it was hard to get fired. You know, apparently there's like a point system where so you get 1.5 points for being late, 3 points for a call out, and a no call no show is 6 points.
I've had a job that's done something similar. I hate that shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, who the fucking ticky tack bullshit? Like, get out of my face.
Yeah. So so just, you know, that's some of the things he told me about. I just found it so, like, you know, and researching the study and then hearing about like what it's like to be I'm like, fuck. And one of the more insidious things that he said was that Disneyland gives a lot of its employees sign-ins to bring people in for free, right? But think about it, what it's like for the company. It's like, oh, you know, maybe and it couldn't be peak days. So think about it, non-peak days where you know, maybe the park isn't as full. You have your employees who get people to bring them in for free, and then they spend money. It's just it's like kind of like, oh, it's a perk, but really it's like an insidious way to get more money.
Yeah.
You know, also a lot of employees, you know, spent their money at Disneyland, which I found really gross. You know,
I mean, yeah, because it makes sense to me because you're like there and like, let's say you take a lunch,
right? And you go to Star Wars Land and you see
you're buying food there.
Yeah.
If you're taking lunch there, you're all around. Like, I mean, the point of Disneyland is to push products.
Yeah.
You know. So, you know, you take breaks, whatever, you're walking around, you see stuff that looks cool, you buy it as an employee there,
right.
You spend all your time there. Obviously, the gas that they pump in the Disneyland that encourages you to be happy and buy things has an effect on you. So I'm not surprised by that at all.
Yeah, there's just it's just, you know, it seems that, you know, the place that's called the happiest place on earth to really, you know, leave
is quite miserable.
Is quite
for
miserable
employees.
For employees, yeah. And, you know, and it's just like, it's like, you know, it seems like, you know, like how I say with Amazon and with Disney, it seems like in order to get like this, you know, with Amazon have it being overnight shipping, or Disney being like, oh, you're in this magical kingdom, that it has to come at the cost of other people's you know, at the cost of people's, you know, health and well-being.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the fact that I was learning that there was a lot of people living in fucking cars, that's absolutely crazy.
The employees.
The
Like in the
employees.
parking lot, just
Yes.
sleeping in their car,
Yes.
getting up in the morning.
That's crazy.
Time to go service the great
Yeah.
mouse master.
Oh, give me your blood. Oh. But yeah, so you know, keep that in mind.
You know, I've only been to Disneyland once in my life, and I was like maybe 10 years old at the time.
Yeah.
It was all right. I wasn't like, I've never been super in the Disney stuff ever since I was young. Disney, especially the older stuff, newer stuff.
The older
not
stuff
so much.
was kind of like cool. It had
Oh, the older movies I'm talking about, like the
Yeah.
fairy tale movies,
Yeah.
they gave me the heebie-jeebies as a kid.
They were kind of creepy.
creeped
I
me
get
out,
that,
and
yeah.
so like I was like very much not into Disney growing up, and still to this day, like there's not a lot of Disney products.
I've gotten you
that
some
I'm
to
like,
watch some of the Marvel stuff, and
I mean, Marvel and Star Wars is one. I mean, they got me there, but that's both stuff that they bought.
Right.
You know, on the Marvel Star
you're talking
Wars.
about the original IP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the fairy tale stuff and
Yeah.
like their old like animated films like creeped me the hell out. So I was like,
well, and
never.
it was full of a lot of racism too.
Oh, you ever hear about like there's always that old theory that they were filled with like subliminal messages.
Yeah, it was
like,
just because Disney animators were bored and they probably
they drew like a little tiny dick into like a castle wall
yeah,
in
so
Aladdin or something.
So I think it's good that these workers at least have a union. So at least there's something fighting on their behalf.
Yeah,
I hope this
an advocate against
Right.
the giant megacorp.
And I think this is a good example of why unions need to exist. They need to exist because they're the only thing that can fight against these huge mega corporations. The Disney is one of the biggest corporations on earth, yet they're trying to do some footwork to try and avoid paying their workers a fair wage. And then there's the okey doke that they pulled on people who were laid off because of a pandemic that wasn't even their fucking fault. And then and then they come back and then they're paid at the same rate as someone who just stayed there, even if they had been working there for 20 years. That's absolutely fucking disgusting. And it's disgusting that corporations like these just get away with shit like that.
Yeah. Unless, even when it comes to light and stories like this, they aren't, this isn't a story that's, super covered. I haven't heard about this,
it's not covered. It's hardly covered.
And a lot of times these stories also fall out of, even if they are covered and in the news, they fall out of, the public eye, fairly quickly, Right. And really it is, like you said, it's left on employees. It's left up to the employees to form unions and advocate for themselves, and when you see, and have the city, the local government that's supposed to be there working for their local community, they're watching out for its citizens, they need to play a role in making sure that the biggest employer and the biggest source of income and tourism to their city is treating the people that work for them in a proper manner and making sure that they're being taken care of rather than taken advantage of.
Right.
So I have a story about a Disneyland. So I heard this one from somebody who heard it from somebody type deal. It was a very secondhand story.
Hey, I heard it from a guy who knew a guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Forget about it, right?
So I don't know how true this one is, but the story goes, in order to maintain kayfabe, so in Disneyland, the people that are playing the characters around the grounds, in order to maintain kayfabe, they're never ever allowed to break character.
Should we explain what kayfabe is?
Okay, go ahead real quick.
So kayfabe is a wrestling term, and it's about maintaining the gimmick, the charade,
the illusion of the performance.
Right. It's about not breaking the illusion that it is real.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
So like I said, in order to maintain kayfabe, you're never allowed to break character, and that goes as far as even when you're walking to or from your break room, you're supposed to be in character. Because if a little Billy or Susie runs up and she's like, "Oh, it's Goofy," you're supposed to be oh, even though you're going on break, even though you're going on break. And it gets apparently pretty extreme with that. And so the story that I heard was that someone was playing a character that was a very heavy costume. I'm going to just go with Goofy. I don't know which one it was, but Goofy sounds right. And, the Goofy character has this big head on him. And I guess while he was, out there playing, whatever Goofy does with kids.
Playing with his balls.
Somehow, this guy, was thrown off balance. He was trying to avoid a kid and he tripped up. And he fell into a puddle of it was water that was meant to be out there, shallow little fountain, and he falls in, and immediately his reaction is to remove his mask, but then he remembers remove the head, and then he remembers that is a big no-no. Big no-no. Even in the most extreme of circumstances, if a fire was happening at Disneyland, they're supposed to remain in character.
They're supposed to run out in their fucking big-ass
pretending
Goofy
to be Goofy, whoa, that's a big fire there.
We should die.
So apparently he fell in and hesitated to take the head off because of this extreme rule about never breaking character and never removing the costume until you're absolutely in private. And I guess the head started to fill with water, and the guy began to choke on the water. And began to choke on the water, and was freaking out, and was right at the last moment where he's I'm gonna die if I don't take this. What's more important, my job here at Disneyland and maintaining this illusion, or drowning in a fucking Goofy costume? And I guess right at the last second, somebody helped him up, and he wanted to take the mask off, the head off, because it was still filled with water, but they were just leave it on and let it drain out. out, and they like quickly took him back and like, oh, kids, Goofy had an accident. Whoopsies. Clumsy Goofy. And they like quickly took him back to the break room where he's like coughing up in the suit, coughing it up.
That is crazy.
Quickly
dude.
took him back to the break room and, you know, got it off of him and whatnot. And apparently the cherry on top to this story was when they sent out somebody else in the Goofy costume back to that same location. They gave him like a towel to pretend like he was all happy and drying off, like, I just took a shower. Yeah, I just took like he was like, oh, just took a dip, I'm drying off.
See, there's a whole thing when you know, like the fantasy is taken that seriously, that it almost comes at someone's expense and well-being.
That's someone's life. You know,
he was up.
You know, again, like I said, I heard this through people who've heard it, so I didn't get to ask questions directly to the person it happened to, but like the person was in a situation where they were in a situation where they had to choose between their life and their Disney job. So, you know,
fuck Disney. Fuck them.
I guess fuck Disney. I've never liked Disney stuff, so I'm okay with that.
Disneyland,
I have no plans to go to Disneyland or Disney World or watch really anything Disney.
There's people who are literally like Disney weirdos.
Disney fanatics, yeah, I've heard of them.
And they're fucking strange.
There was like some video that I saw posted online where some guy was like, I'm gonna try every water at every fountain in Disneyland. And he was like going around with a cup and like drinking it.
Yeah.
And he's like, not good. The fountain outside Space World, not good.
So all right, you want to get into the other story?
All right. So to hell with Disney.
It's
creepy.
Yeah. It's a world.
Oh, we're gonna get some hate. If anything's gonna bring us hate mail, it's gonna be the Disney fanatics coming down on us.
It's a world of joy and a world of cheer. I just think about if
there's anywhere that's a portal to hell, it's a Small World ride.
If you just think about, you know, it's funny. I just pictured like, you know, the Disney horror movie, and it's just it's a Small World played all slow, like, you know how like a more modern horror stories always do, where they take like a popular song and they play it all slow, like it's
with like a little like chime behind
a little
it.
Ding, ding. Like I think for us it was Jordan Peele. He used I got 5 on it, but he did it with like ding.
That one was kind of cool.
I got 5 on it. Yeah, that one was cool though. So man, we're off on tangents, man. All right, so I wanted to talk about, first off, let's just mention this fact. BuzzFeed does good reporting. I had no idea.
Not you, BuzzFeed. You're fake news.
You're fake news, BuzzFeed.
You remember when Trump said that?
Yeah, I do.
He's like fielding questions. He's like, not you, BuzzFeed.
But you know, I was really like, I had heard that they did like reporting, but I didn't know how seriously I took it, to be honest. You know, I know BuzzFeed more so just from like the listicles that they would make and, you know, stupid shit like that. And apparently they won a Pulitzer Prize last year from their cover of like the Chinese Uyghur situation.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I for a while I always just thought of them as kind of like a successor to Cracked. You know, Cracked used to do all their lists.
R.I.P. Cracked, gone but not forgotten.
But you know, I saw them as a successor. But yeah, I've heard that they do reporting. So
what they did was apparently like in 2011 they hired someone who was a Pulitzer Prize winner at ProPublica. And he headed up their like investigative journalism, which I think is cool.
Yeah, right on.
So one thing that was a big undertaking, a huge story. Do you remember back in October of last year, when the restrictions were pretty heavy? That there was the kidnapping.
The COVID
lockdowns. There was the kidnapping of the governor, Gretchen Whitmer.
Well, she wasn't actually kidnapped.
Right. Well, the attempt.
The alleged
attempt.
Conspiracy theory to kidnap. Kidnap the governor.
So, it's super interesting, and I just want to make this caveat before we go on in this story. I think I can speak on your behalf that most of the guys who got caught up in this you know, kind of, you know, entrapment situation, I'm just gonna go ahead and say I feel that this is an entrapment situation. They're still terrible people. They're still not good people. They were, they repeatedly in these groups.
What are they, white nationalists?
Not so much. They're more so anti-government.
Okay.
But I'm sure if you really prodded that, I'm sure some white nationalist shit would come out. But
I don't know if I'm gonna say they're terrible people, but there's some nuts. There's
some nuts. Okay, so so they were back last year. They were gonna kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer because
Michigan.
Of
Michigan governor, correct?
Michigan, yes.
Okay.
Because of the frustrations with lockdowns, because apparently in Michigan was where some of the most strict lockdown measures were because of their high COVID rate. But here's the thing. Turns out that there was a lot of informants and undercover FBI involved in this, right? And that's to be expected in any major investigation, but there was
the FBI and government agents infiltrate and monitor any groups they consider to be extremists, like
right.
The NSA or whoever, I'm not sure. There's a federal agency that monitors 4chan and other various chans, and government agents have been known to put themselves by disguise or sneak into various leftist organizations or anarchist groups.
That movie Judas and the Black Messiah is about the assassination of Fred Hampton by a FBI informant. Who was the leader of the Black Panther Party.
Yeah, and you remember when we watched the trial of Chicago 7, they were outed by an informant who had infiltrated their ranks.
So it's a popular technique by these organizations.
I had once seen on the internet, this was several years ago, it was like a Tinder profile of a guy, and it was in Brazil, and it was a post, and it was like people in the Brazil underground warning about, because the guy was using Tinder or whatever to connect with like-minded leftists, and it was someone had screenshotted it and be like,
that sounds like bait.
Yeah, and be like, on the lookout for this guy. He's a known informant for the Brazilian government who's trying to infiltrate underground leftist groups.
Yeah, and the Brazilian government is known to be very authoritarian at times, especially under what's the guy's name
Bolsonaro.
Again? What is it?
Bolsonaro,
yeah, that's it. So there was an Iraq war vet who had been wearing a wire. We'll get into him a little bit later. I'm just setting the stage for you because there's a lot of characters here. I didn't write down.
Tell me a little bit more about this group. Like they're a militia.
Yeah,
they're a militia group.
So let me,
anti-government militia group.
Yeah, yes. They were the Michigan Wolverines, I think they were called.
Okay.
There was a biker who was also an informant. There was a guy who advised him where to put explosives and where they can get them as much as they need, who was also an undercover FBI agent. There was also another FBI undercover agent named Mark.
This group sounds like it's more FBI agents than actual.
Yeah. 3 weeks later, there were a dozen arrested. Touted as an example of law enforcement agencies working together to make sure violent extremists would never succeed. And basically, these guys were tied to the Boogaloo Boys. They were
That's the second Civil War.
Yeah,
folk.
the Civil War II Electric Boogaloo.
Christ.
Yeah, it's so dumb. They thought that they could start the second Civil War by
starting inciting racial violence and racial tensions
by arresting Gretchen Whitmer.
They're gonna start the next Civil War,
and then they thought about in the article they talked about how they pictured when cops do busts of a drug den, they'll put all the guns and drugs on a table and they'll be taking pictures of the score. They thought that they were going to be doing that, but with Gretchen Whitmer hogtied up on a table.
Wait, what? They're gonna kidnap her, hogtie her, put her on a table and take photos and be like, you guys ready for the second Civil War?
I mean, and also, as the story went on, there was I think the thing here is, I think a lot of these guys were just talk.
Yeah.
Right? Through reading the stories, a lot of these guys just wanted to act tough. Like in the article,
it's a fantasy for them.
In the article, they talk about this one guy who said like he was one of the. I didn't write down any of the names because there was just so many names. It just would have been too hard to
follow that.
So one of the three the original targets, the main targets, were were in this like kind of militia group. And one of them, he had said like, "Oh, I Molotoved a cop's home, and I have some C4," and it turns out it wasn't C4; that it was fake. So like a lot of these guys, they and the Molotov thing, well, it turns out to be a bullshit story.
Yeah, it's almost like it's just a fantasy for them.
They're cosplaying.
They're LARPing.
They're LARPing, dude. They're cosplaying, but they're cosplaying as fucking extremist, terrorist,
anti-state, anti-government, nationalist,
and the thing
white
the
nationalist.
thing to keep in mind here is that with the FBI informant, the government is trying to manufacture consent and trying to create the narrative that this was a precursor to January 6th, the what did they call it? The insurrection.
Insurrection at the Capitol.
Yeah. The Diet Coup. The government had at least 12 confidential informants who assisted in the sprawling investigation. BuzzFeed found out that the CIs were more involved than previously reported. And we'll get into that. And just to keep in mind when I'm talking about this, some people argue this is a good deterrent, and some people view it as government overreach. I'll ask you at the end of this. And you tell me what you think.
All right.
So they had nearly a hand in every step of this alleged plot, starting with its inception. So, a longtime informant from Wisconsin helped organize meetings around the country where many of the plotters met. The CI
in Wisconsin. I'm sorry, did I mishear you?
What's
you said Wisconsin?
Wisconsin, yes.
Not in Michigan?
Yes.
Huh.
We'll get into who that was. A CI paid for hotel rooms and foods as an incentive to get people to come. He was the Iraq war vet who is named in this article as Dan. They didn't give him his full name, probably out of
still an ongoing investigation,
right.
Right.
But he was the corner, like the main confidential informant in this story.
Okay.
So he climbed so high that at one point he was second in command at this militia.
Yeah, the Wolverines.
Yeah.
With the Wolverines.
So
second Wolverine in command.
And this guy, Dan, as the story goes on, he was encouraging one of the leaders of this group to push this story, right? Push the mastermind. He would be like, "Oh, why don't you write a manifesto? Why don't you? You know what I mean? Like, why don't
it
you?" It
always starts with the manifesto,
right? But you know what I'm saying? Like the FBI informant was pushing them to make this plan of kidnapping Gretchen Whitmer as more of a actual,
rather than just like a fantasy or like they're pontificating.
They're trying to make it materialize, basically. And the article brings up that, especially during a lot of like the war on terror, there was a lot of, radicalizing young Muslim men on the internet, basically entrapping them and radicalizing them. And like, they would be like, "Oh yeah, you should totally go to Syria. I'll pay your ticket." You know what I mean? Like, there's a bunch of stories out there like that of, like I said, young Muslim men getting caught up. So they're all claiming entrapment, which is typical for domestic terrorists.
That get caught up by informants.
That get caught up by informants. Their ranks. But it usually fails. The FBI has always, used CIs, confidential informants, I'll just call them CIs, to infiltrate dissident groups like the Black Panthers, the KKK, and Martin Luther King himself. Informants, the use of informants has a mixed record. Some say it's prevented terrible violence. Some say they've coerced innocent people and falsified evidence and committed murder while working for the FBI. So we'll go back to the inception of this, right? So a guy named Dan, he's a veteran, Iraqi veteran. He's injured. He had CTE, a fractured spine. He
got beat up over. This happened to him in war.
In war, yeah.
He got beat up over there.
So he went looking to talk to people about guns on Facebook and try to find like-minded individuals.
You like guns?
Yeah. In Michigan, there are about 22 or more anti-government extremist groups in that state. As he scrolled through the Guns Right pages, the Facebook algorithm, tying back to a story that you talked about.
The dead internet?
Yes. The Facebook algorithm pushed him in a way to check out a group called the Wolverine Watchmen.
Hey, he might be interested in the Wolverine Watchmen.
So the page encouraged him to download an app called Wire. He wanted to stay fresh by, running through the woods and shooting targets, I guess, keep his skills from war, by doing, all that shit.
Yeah.
The encrypted chat, they joked about the Big Boog.
The Big Boog.
The Big Igloo, and they called themselves the Bujahideen.
The Bujahideen.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that. I was like, yeah, I don't exactly like that. The Bujahideen. So, some in the chat urged the group to download a hunting app that claimed they could use it to track police and murder them. So then, feeling like, this guy's a veteran, feeling out of respect to the cops, he's like, I'm going to go to the cops with this shit because it's crazy.
Yeah.
He showed the cops, and then he was contacted by a special agent asking him to come to the FBI offices. They asked him to work undercover, and he didn't really, in the article it says that he wasn't expecting anything, but at the end of it, he was later given a new car and around $24,000.
Ooh.
Yeah, not too bad.
Nice little payout.
Apparently,
thanks, Uncle Sam.
In the article, it says that this guy was working out of, good conscience or whatever, That's at least what they say. Who knows with this story? The FBI has spent $42 million a year in the range from 2012 to 2018 on informants. $42 million a year.
Wow.
Yeah. They're sending a lot of feelers out there, okay?
I always thought informants were just like people I always thought a large majority of informers, I should say, were just like people they had arrested and they, coerced them into and be acting as an informant for reduced sentencing.
Right. That was my assumption as well. So his code name was
this guy just went along with it. Like I would have been like, no, I let you guys know about it. I did my part. I don't want to do anymore.
This guy was already brainwashed into being a veteran.
I guess maybe he looked at it like he continuing to serve his country in some way.
So his code, I know you want to know his code name so bad right now. Yeah, no, his code name was Thor.
Oh my God.
So the FBI focused on 3 targets, the 3 main guys who headed up this local group, the Michigan
Wolverine
Watchmen. So he started training these guys, right? He started training these guys. There was a guy, Steven Robeson, who was a biker. He was in a biker gang called the Ghost Riders, and in a murder trial, he snitched them out to the prosecution. So this guy was already a confidential.
Yeah, he's already a rat.
He was already a rat bastard. So he helped the government put away a bunch of people, actually.
They're part of this MC.
Right. So Robeson started a group called the Washington Patriot 3 Percenters.
Oh, I've heard of them. That's who Sacha Baron Cohen did that song at. That was one of their rallies. Yeah. And they caught on to him.
So, he started that group. A man named Barry Croft Jr., he was one of the targets I mentioned, first floated the idea of the kidnapping. Dan at this point was second in command. Dan is the veteran who's a CI. I just want to refresh.
Okay.
So he raced to record a call with a guy named Adam Fox, who was a prominent Boogaloo boy.
Nice.
Yeah, he wore like, like there was they talk about in the article that there was an original, like they stormed the Capitol building in Michigan, and they were like allowed in as long as, they were scanned for temperatures. And they actually mentioned going and looking for Gretchen Whitmer this time, but she wasn't there. Basically this guy said that he was just this guy who's like, I'm a General Adam Fox. He's like, I'm this general without men, and he's like, we want the lawless tyrants out of power and take the building and then take the hostages. He was this kind of guy. Dan invited them to train with the militia, Adam and his cohort. Dan drove 5 watchmen, 6,000 rounds, and rented a suburban, lodgings, and food, all sponsored by the FBI.
Wow.
And
FBI is paying for this trip.
Yeah,
for
basically,
the Boogaloo.
the
FBI
FBI
is
was
paying
paying
for the
for a
Boogaloo.
lot of like the transportation costs, a lot of this stuff. Members quit, and then basically Dan becomes the leader.
Wow.
He becomes the leader of this group.
He just like fell into it.
Yeah, dude. So this confidential informant is the leader of this militia group that was accused of this attempted kidnapping. So Dan urged Fox to, like I've mentioned this before, Dan urged Adam Fox to write this manifesto. And write a manifesto about this plot, basically giving undeniable evidence that this is, that these guys are domestic terrorists.
Yeah.
The FBI urged Dan to bring in more people into this plot that they can tie to this plot. More people somewhat involved. They talked about like going to all these different meetings, some in Ohio, all over. And basically Dan was trying to get people to join this
Wolverine Watchmen's?
Right, but more importantly, just to basically get people who are kind of in connection with this whole kidnapping plot.
Oh, they're trying to rope more people in for the scheme?
Right, exactly.
Going around the Great Lakes area, being like, who wants in on this?
Yeah, so Dan told the FBI told Dan to bring 3 watchmen to go and surveil her house. Those 3 men were later, they had no involvement in the actual part where they get arrested, but they ended up getting arrested for just watching and providing surveillance to the house. And they said they maintained that was all they did.
Yeah.
Continuing. Dan inserted another undercover agent. His name was Red, who is a so-called explosives expert.
And, you need one of those on every kidnapping mission.
right, exactly. So this guy, this is sounding like shit straight out of a movie. And basically this guy is an undercover agent, and he's like, hey, we need $4,000 and we'll go and get these explosives, right? To blow up this bridge. I forget why they wanted to blow up this bridge, but whatever.
In part of the kidnapping, they needed to blow up a bridge.
Yeah, bro, this is like Ocean's 11.
Sounds like it's going to bring a lot of heat onto them.
So on October 7th, they met in a warehouse supposedly to buy these explosives from Red, and that's when they got arrested. Funnily enough, you want the guys only had about the 2 other guys other than Dan, who he brought with him, some other members, only had about $450 combined in their pockets for this so-called explosive deal. So Dan was probably
like a little less.
Dan was probably like, shoot, they're probably like, how are we gonna get a hold of this money for the explosives to blow up the bridge? So many steps. Basically, I assume he was probably like, don't worry, I got it. Don't worry, I got a guy. Both sides heap praise on the FBI. I'm talking about both sides of the political aisle, because they were like, wow, the FBI is doing its job stopping terror.
Yeah.
And guess how much Dan had to be reimbursed for all of the costs associated of getting all these people involved in this plot? You want to take a guess?
How much he was reimbursed?
Yeah, for basically using the FBI credit card.
Man, I would guess he probably spent about 10 grand.
$54,000.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was like plane tickets, lodging, all this shit.
Damn.
Yeah. So, right now the proceedings are still undergoing. Like I said, only one has copped a guilty plea.
Most of them are claiming entrapment.
Right.
That the FBI strung them along and encouraged this and tried to make it happen.
Exactly. Because why? My theory is to fit some sort of narrative.
Which is?
Just to, increase the police state, basically, and increase, more surveillance on people, and use this as a justification of being like, see, they were gonna kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, and, and the thing is that you ask the question, and I'm gonna ask you this to you now, and this is what I was thinking the whole time. Would this plot have been carried out if not for the Dan character in the story? Would the plot have been carried out? And there's a lot of people who say that no, it wouldn't have, and that it most likely would have just remained a fantasy.
Yeah.
And so what are your thoughts?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. I think this group sounds like a lot of nationalist groups that have risen up in the past decade or two. Some of the most famous being like the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers or whatever. And I think like
Oath Keepers.
Yeah, the Oath Keepers. You haven't heard of them? They're the guys that went down there during the Clive and Bundy thing.
Oh,
yeah.
Those guys.
Yeah, they're all like far right, militia groups types. I think a lot of times, I think they do, it is a conversations that they have a lot, and I think it's like ideation they like to, toy with. But to say it'll like actually go ahead and happen, I would say in most cases that like for these guys, they're probably like really bored with themselves, and this is like, obviously something they're passionate about. They're these political beliefs that lead them to have ideas like this. I think that so yeah, I don't know if I would say that this was gonna happen one way or the other and the FBI stopped something, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with all the methods that took place here. I think that planning informants in there and planning people that are like going along with this and actively plotting with them and giving them resources to recruit more members is kind of nefarious. And I just don't think the police should have that much of an involvement. I think they should just watch them if they're concerned. Just like just watch them, monitor, survey from afar,
spy on them like you do all of us.
Yeah, I mean like maybe more so just like just keep an eye on it. It's just one of those things to monitor. Just be like, hey, we're aware there's some nutty kooks out in the Great Lakes regions and all around the country, especially in like, more rural areas that are like with these ideas and with these certain set of beliefs, and they play with these ideas. I think, a lot of times it is just hot air that they're blowing, and it is just trumped up talk. And I mean, I've seen it firsthand, people that act like this. A lot of it is just an act at the end of the day, It's just like what they want to believe. They want to think that they're tough. They want to think that they're rebels. They want to think that they're fighting.
Weebs for freedom.
They're fighting the power, but like most of the time they fall in line, I would say like 90% of the time. I'm sure there's 10, a small percentage of them that are like really willing and capable. There is obviously a few, but like to get a whole organization involved, that would be complicated. It'd be something massive if they pulled that off. And if you come at this from an anti-police perspective, I just think that it's very kind of overreaching police tactics. Yeah. And that if they can do this, you might hear about these guys and be like, oh, well, fuck them. They're far right extremists and nationalists. But I mean, if the feds are willing to do that to extreme right-wing groups, they're obviously willing to do that to any group. Yeah. So regardless of
Black Lives Matter,
or any political group or whatever it may be. So, making sure that the feds, just don't have the power to kind of like overreach with this, you know, so I can't believe I'm defending them a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it does seem like a little entrapping, especially how much it sounds like they kind of strung this along and pushed it
like
along.
I said, the guy Dan, the Iraq veteran, he became the leader at a certain point.
That's wild. Yeah, he's basically running the show at that point.
At this point, you know, if he just became the leader, I mean, you couldn't really arrest him on anything because a lot of it's just talk, right? Like you said, but he like kind of manifested it and made it real, right? He took that these guys, like, I mean, how many times do you hear a dude say like, "Oh, I'll kick that guy's ass," or like, you know, a lot of it's just, you know, it's just bravado, or it's just bullshit.
You know, to kind of relate it to a little bit closer to what these guys think, it's like people who have a lot of guns be like, one day the government's coming to take it, and I'll be there at my door ready to fight back. And it's like, let's say like that does happen. Like, you're not gonna, most of those people, it'll end up being all talk. You know, they're not gonna sit, you know, really fight back against the government in that way. It's like I've been saying, it feels very much like a fantasy they have to maybe try and assert some power over their lives and in their country where they feel like they don't have a lot of power, which I think many Americans have that frustration of feeling powerless.
I just think that this was used as a political weapon to kind of give into the police state a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this only serves to just like, to bolster the image of you know, the feds in this case, apparently who it is, but just bolster the image of, you know, police activity and make them look like heroes. Like, obviously something like we mentioned the January 6th.
Well, right now, literally, they're having the hearings.
Well, I know,
And have you seen some of the police testimony?
Yeah, they don't seem happy.
Yeah, no,
they're pretty pissed.
Yeah, they're pretty pissed. And you know what's funny? It's like, I remember hearing from them. This is kind of like a tangent, but that there were people holding Blue Lives Matter flags as they were like,
as they're attacking the police.
Like,
jeez,
you know, it's
all talk. It's all a facade. But you know, something like the January 6th Capitol riot,
that was real.
It is real, and it doesn't serve to help the case of these guys because you know, especially the photos of the dude that was running around with zip ties and in a fucking black outfit. Of course,
the
like,
shaman.
You know, people I think will look at that, you know, and be like, oh, like, so they were trying to kidnap politicians. They were trying to kidnap congressmen. They wanted to hang Mike Pence. And Nancy Pelosi.
And AOC.
And they wanted them all. You know, so like an incident like that, which is obviously like was huge and everybody's heard of that. I think that did a big disservice for these types of militia groups who might, you know, just kind of play the role a bit and, you know, just kind of just be like, you know, guys that are just out there and it's more of a hobby than it is like something they're literally intending on acting on. You know, but something like January 6th, I think gives the public this idea that, oh yeah, this is possible and these people will try and pursue this if given the chance, you know, and obviously the politicians, the congressmen that were there who were targets of this probably then see the FBI doing stuff like this and they're like thankful for it. They're like, oh yeah, the FBI's here stopping anything from this happening again, you know, so yeah, I just think that this and busting something like this, they're all like, see, we're protecting the politicians who are obviously, you know, in control and funding the feds and other, you know, police agencies. You know, it just it just feeds itself at that point.
And you know, I just you know, I'm against the police state. You know, I don't think.
As you should be.
As you should be.
Who wants a police state?
Yeah. George Orwell, 1974.
1984.
I know.
Orwellian. Who wants a police state, you know? And so, regardless of these guys' political views and, you know, whether you agree with them or not, like, it is a little scary that the police, you know, pursue these lines of action in order to, you know, capture and prosecute people they considered to be extremists,
and
you know?
also justifying spending budgets.
Yeah, well,
justifying, spending money like I said before, like on the war on terror, and basically you entrap these young Muslim men, and then you basically fit your narrative that there are terrorists trying to, cause harm to America.
Yeah, and then more power can be given to the forces that be that fight that quote unquote terrorism or extremism, whatever ism it might be.
Yeah.
But who's out there to judge what makes an extremist or what doesn't?
Right.
Obviously, I think it would be kind of negligent of the feds to completely turn a blind eye to this and let it run wild, but to get so hands-on with it too, I think
that the guy becomes your informant becomes the leader of the organization.
I think that's overreaching, and
to get all of the lower guys, because they had like a hierarchy in this group, and to get all of the other members,
as most anti-authoritarian groups have.
Well, it was like hierarchy. You remember that one dude that was in the Proud Boys was an informant.
Yeah,
that one dude.
Like I was saying earlier, this is not a new tactic. They exist, and they monitor. They monitor them. They watch them, and in many cases, they have informants undercover in these groups.
Be against the police state. All right. Well, should we go into our shame of the week?
Okay, we'll shame something.
All right. Get
to it.
Shame.
All right. I'll take
All right,
it.
so we're shaming this week. I brought this one to the table. I was talking to Zach earlier.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it earlier.
Yeah, about what to shame this week. And there's something that's hot on my mind. And it pissed me the fuck off. It was this goddamn Space Jam 2: A New Legacy, dude. Fuck this movie, dude. Fuck it up its fucking ass.
I mean, I remember when this movie was announced, I kind of just rolled my eyes, and I'm like, you knew it was going to happen. This idea has been teased for a while that they were going to make a Space Jam 2 with LeBron James. But when it was finally announced, I just kind of rolled my eyes. I'm like, here it is, a little cash grab. They can squeeze. Space Jam is still in the memory of the public and the consumer.
Of our
squeeze a little bit more out of it.
Because our generation is the one who.
When that movie? When did the first one come out?
What's that?
When did the first one come out?
In the 90s.
What year exactly? Because I was 5 years old at the oldest at the end of the 90s.
Cut. 1996 is when it came out.
1996. Okay. So, I would have been 2 years old. I didn't watch Space Jam on its release.
Fair enough. But I watched it pretty young. I watched it when I was 5.
I mean, must have seen it in the early 2000s.
Right. And that movie is a commercial. The original, and it is. It's
a commercial for both the NBA. And
no, it's just a commercial for just capitalism products,
like
Nike shoes, fucking Gatorade, all that shit. It was just a huge cash grab, and it was also just
the first one. You say is a cash grab, okay?
Yeah, dude. In the first one, they had Michael Jordan living in some regular ass house, like he isn't living in some fucking mansion. He's go back and watch this. No. He's living in some regular ass house with a hoop that has the chains. You know what I mean? Those like the ghetto hoop that has like the chain nets.
Yeah, that's the coolest one.
Yeah. But the first one, it had Michael Jordan, even though he was not a great actor, it had some kind of charm and charisma to it.
I've heard a lot of people say that it kind of captured the essence of the 90s. So
and I always liked Looney Tunes as a kid. I always thought they were fun. I liked Bugs Bunny. There was a fun aspect to that cartoon.
Sure.
And I always liked him, so especially after watching Space Jam, and I was
so
like,
what they're doing with Space Jam 2 is they're just doing something that's become a very common tactic in the entertainment industry and the
is
entertainment.
where you just connect a bunch of different properties
they're
together.
capitalizing on nostalgia.
Yeah,
it's the nostalgia
it's a member
factor.
movie.
And nowadays the entertainment industry has realized that's like a very lucrative market is capitalizing on that nostalgia. Gotta get that nostalgia fix.
Yeah, gotta squeeze that nostalgia. Yeah,
all these people in their mid 20s.
Yeah.
Oh, you all remember the 90s.
Oh, you remember? I remember. So let's think about. Let's break down what Space Jam 2 is. Okay,
I started to watch it when I saw it because I was like, oh, let me see this, and I got to the part where LeBron James is dropped in the Toon World, and then I fell asleep.
Yeah,
and I had no want to put it back on the next day or rewatch it again.
Yeah, as you should. It's a fucking waste of time.
What happens in Space Jam 2?
So okay, let's break down what it is first off. Okay, it's a sequel / remake. Okay,
it's a
reboot. Okay, already unoriginal as fuck. Already, I'm just saying off the bat. Okay, then they put the same fucking premise in the movie, because what else could it be that it comes down to one big game at the end of the movie? You know what I mean? There's literally I don't know where else they could have fucking gone with the story, but that was just gonna happen. It was like, okay, first off, LeBron James, not likable whatsoever. It's like, you know what it was?
He's like likable in post-game interviews.
LeBron James has absolutely no charisma whatsoever. He is terrible in this movie. He seems like the person that was like their second choice because they couldn't find anyone that could compare to Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who would be the second choice? Who would be the original
They were
choice?
just like, I guess we got.
It's
LeBron.
always been his name floated as.
I know,
that.
but still, it's. The thing is, though, is that it's a movie, though, and you got to watch this guy act through parts of it, and you're just like, oh, well, he's fucking terrible.
For an athlete, you ever see an athlete try to act, or you ever play the 2K story mode games, and they get the actual players to read their lines, and sometimes they're just like, hey, man, you should try and pass the ball more. They're like, athletes are bad actors.
Yeah.
For an actor, I wouldn't say he's that bad in the movie. What is that movie? Fucking
Trainwreck.
The Trainwreck.
No, yeah, he was
like,
good in that.
Not bad.
But no, in this he was bad. First off, they CGI'd his hairline.
No way.
No, they did, dude. There is a clip I will show you where some dude is literally has like some kind of sprayer thing and is filling in his hairline. Just jokes because people clown him for his hairline. But yeah, so
is that right?
I mean, you know what it is? The NBA lighting is not really favorable lighting. So yeah, I didn't really it was lacking anything of any substance. I know it's just a kid's movie, all right? I'm fully aware.
No, I'm telling you, this is nostalgia. This is a product of the nostalgia, capitalizing on nostalgia, because they're hoping that a lot of people in their mid-20s will be like, you remember Space Jam? Yeah, here, come watch Space Jam. I'm sure, part of it is kids, but they're also marketing it to the nostalgia factor.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. Literally at this point, it was just a commercial for WB Properties. It was like, oh, look, Don Cheadle comes and he plays an algorithm called Algorithm. Mm-hmm. Lame.
I did see that part.
And he pitches LeBron all these ideas like, hey, it's LeBron and Harry Potter. It's LeBron and, Game of Thrones. And, they basically...
was it Rick and Morty in it, too?
Yeah. And so basically what happens is he gets stuck... His son gets sucked into this algorithm, the Warner 3000, they call it, where it has all the Warner Brothers properties. And basically, it's described that all of the Looney Tunes... They all went to different WB properties. The grandma was in The Matrix, world. There was a Casablanca world. There was a Maltese Falcon world.
Are they trying to set up the Warner Brothers extended universe canon?
I don't
It's
know.
canon. It's canon. The Matrix exists in the same world.
I don't know. I think
It's
it's just that
official
they
Warner Brother canon.
I-
Looney Tunes exist in the Matrix.
Yeah, it's dumb. It's dumb. And so yeah, basically they just go through all these different properties, you know, fucking like Wile E. Coyote was in Mad Max. You know what I mean? Like, and you just see them like, oh, they're in these silly situations. Oh, cool. You know, and then basically the last half of the movie is the basketball game, right?
They play the Monstars.
No, they play the Goon Squad.
The Goon Squad. Who's on the Goon Squad?
So it's Klay Thompson,
Shout out
Damian
Klay
Lillard.
Thompson.
Two WNBA
Shout out
players that
Damian
I'm not aware of, and Anthony Davis. You know,
I like Klay Thompson and Damian Lillard. I like them both.
Yeah, but you know the thing is that they
Do
decided.
they win? Does the Goon Squad win?
No, of course.
That'd be pretty cool. I would actually make this movie a little better.
And then
I
here's the thing that bothered me too. Okay, is that all of these WB properties were represented during the big game because basically they all come to watch this game, right? And it's basically every WB fucking property that you could think of, you know, like the fucking Penguin is on the sidelines and the Joker, and there's one of the witness guys from the Mad Max, and you know what I mean? It's just like people in shitty cosplay, and it's lame. It's just so lame, dude. It's the Iron Giant was in the background. King Kong was
do the
hanging,
Iron Giant like that.
and then King Kong, like, bro, it's like.
Wow.
And the Iron Giant is wholesome
It
as
does
fuck,
sound
dude.
like,
And
yeah.
they fucking they brought the Iron Giant out for this bullshit.
For shill out the Iron Giant.
He was wholesome as fuck, dude.
You got to turn the Iron Giant into a shill for Warner Brothers.
So,
it just sounds like a big commercial
so
for them.
The biggest there was a Porky Pig rap scene.
A circle jerk.
There's a Porky Pig rap scene.
Warner Brothers circle jerk.
Yeah. And it was just terrible. It was just terrible. Like, I hated it. There was nothing of like LeBron like is like anti-video. He's like, his son makes a video game. He's like, no, you got to be a basketball prodigy like me. And he's like acts like a dick. He's the shitty father in the fucking movie.
Well, you got to have some conflict. It is a movie after all.
I guess, or you know, whatever. But still,
No,
like,
Dad, I want to design video games.
he's like, no, you gotta be a basketball prodigy like me, Dab.
See, I think what they're trying to do is how the original Space Jam captured some essence of the 90s. I think they're trying to capture some essence of modern times, you know, with like all the technology and video games and stuff.
So one of the things that they do in this movie, have you heard of the term lamp shading?
And I have not.
So it's like when it's like being self-referential in the movie, and like
It's one of those TV trope things.
So in the movie, being self-referential, they're like, "Oh, I haven't." Like Bug Bunny goes like, "Haven't we done this before, Doc?" You know what I mean? And he's like, you know, they're trying to poke, like, when Don Cheadle mentions like all the ideas he has to have LeBron James as like the star in these different WB properties, LeBron James is like, "That's a stupid idea," but what's this fucking movie? It's LeBron James in different properties. And so it's like they're trying to be self-referential, but they're fucking doing it in the stupidest, dumbest fucking way. And you can't be corny and then be like, we're in on the joke, guys. We're in on the joke. Yeah, this is terrible. Why'd you even put it out then?
Yeah. Sounds corny as hell.
Yeah, dude. And I just think that this movie symbolizes the void in culture me and you talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And that, you know...
they have nothing nowadays.
Yeah, and it's just like, this is a...
New IPs are... Well, I've heard this talked about before. New IPs it's very risky ventures these days. Like,
Right.
What in the mainstream. Like, creating a new... IP, new story, new universe entirely from scratch is extremely risky these days. So they go back to what's tried and true, and it's risky from a market standpoint. And so they go back to what's tried and true. That's why they're constantly pumping out Marvel films or Star Wars stuff. They keep going back to what already exists because just recreating something new is risky from a financial standpoint
and an artistic it's it leads to like a lack of any like ingenuity or any kind of like originalism. It just is like everything's just a rehash. Everything's just this was, I heard people call it Ready Player Dumb, because you know how Ready Player One had like all like the different video game properties in the movie, right?
I never saw that.
Oh, okay. Well, they had a bunch of like different like video game characters, and they had a different, the Iron Giant was also shilled out for that one.
Really?
As well.
Man, they're dragging the Iron Giant's corpse.
Dude, they just really want to fucking shill out the Iron Giant, dude.
Leave the Iron Giant alone.
Leave him alone.
He flew into a nuke to save the world, so
yeah.
Give him a break.
Give him a break. The Iron Giant's the real
He doesn't want to sell Warner Brothers products anymore.
No, he wants to be in his own original movie that is a sweet story about a boy and his giant robot.
Watch. I bet in some years they'll try and dig that one up from the grave.
Oh,
either
and then
reboot it or give it an Iron Giant too.
That's another thing that pisses me off, is that it's the toons are in CGI. They're not supposed to be in CGI. The whole point of them being toons is them being 2D.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you put them in CGI, they look weird.
And they redrew Jessica Rabbit to not be as sexy.
No,
they didn't want
no. You're thinking of Jessica Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh.
It was Lola Bunny.
Oh. Whatever, same thing.
No, it's not. It's completely different.
Same
Who
thing.
Framed Roger Rabbit is a good fucking movie, and I'll stand by that.
Okay, I'm not arguing about whether it's a good movie or a bad movie. I'm just saying the character, same idea behind the character.
Yeah, just a character.
And they don't want They don't want him to be sexy anymore.
Yeah. There's a lot of weirdos who got upset that they desexualized the Lola Bunny character.
Yeah, there's people like mad about it.
They're like, oh,
what am I supposed to jack off to now in theaters?
How am I supposed to jack off to Lola Bunny now? Thanks.
I'll still make it work.
So I really just wanted to shame this movie because I think it's a symbol of this is what we're gonna get from now on.
It's a cultural void.
It's a cultural void that we live in, and we get fucking shitty rehashes like fucking Space Jam 2, and we'll get that until the end of time.
Yep. Don't give into this nostalgia market.
Yeah,
either.
anytime they try to fucking.
I remember a few years ago they came out with like a Power Rangers movie.
Yeah,
and
I
knew a bunch of guys like my age that were going to go see it, and I was like, why, dude? Why? There's movies like gonna be for kids, and like, don't you remember watching the Power Rangers? And I was like, first off, I didn't have cable for the first several years of my life, so no, I don't, unfortunately.
Power Rangers were they're lit.
And then like, I'm just like, dude, this is just one of those it's not gonna be a good movie. It's just gonna be one of those nostalgia factor things where they know that there's a market for nostalgia out there, these products, and they don't have any better ideas. They're not going to go out and take the risk of creating new stories, new films, new franchises. So they just rehash it, plop it out there, plop out the Steam and Deuce, and then.
But let's be honest. Let's be honest, Zach. This has been going on for a long time, and the thing is that there are still good movies being released.
Of course, I'm not saying there's not, but there is a greater
number,
a greater cultural void.
Well, Disney right now is doing like, hey, what rides do we have? Let's turn it into a movie. They literally have the Jungle Cruise dropping in theaters this week.
I have no idea what that is.
There's a ride at Disneyland called the Jungle Cruise, and they were like, hey, what if we turn this thing into a ride?
Cool.
Into a movie.
Cool.
Yeah. So, really just
I haven't heard anybody say anything really good about this movie either. I mean, apparently it's been successful at the box office, so mission accomplished, Warner Brothers, I guess. But like, I'm not hearing a lot of people really talk about this movie all that much, other than the fact that it's out. People are like, oh, you hear they made a new Space Jam? Yeah, cool, whatever. But it doesn't seem like it's like hitting a nerve or like, pressing that button that gets it like really talked about, or
So right now it's sitting with a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 80% audience score.
Yeah. Critics hate it. I don't want to be that snob and say the critics are right more than the audience, but It depends on the type of movie, but I think in this
they're
case,
right on this one.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
the audience is
right.
fucking retarded. All right, so don't see Space Jam 2. Watch some good movies. Watch some shit. Watch something by A24. It'll be original at the very least.
Watch Moana.
Pixar is 10 times better than that shit. But yeah, so I just it really just stirred a lot of feeling in me, and I vented to all of my multiple group chats about how much I hated this fucking movie.
Space Jam 2.
Oh, I just hated it because it just it's remember porn. All right,
well, shame on Space Jam 2.
Shame on you, you piece of shit movie. All right, so what you got, Zach?
All right, this week, for the mystery conspiracy theory.
All right,
give it one of your voices. Give it an intro.
Mystery. What is behind that door? I don't know. What's going on?
Conspiracy.
Where am I? Conspiracy.
All right. This one's a fun one. It's not really connected to anything we've talked about today.
No.
But
36 Mafia.
So this theory originally appeared online a few years ago. I do remember vaguely hearing about it, but it wasn't like something I looked into. But it came across to my attention a few weeks ago when I was when I was researching another story. So this is about the Memphis rap scene of the mid-90s. I guess this is how we'll connect it. Space Jam, original one from the 90s. This is about the 90s in Memphis on the streets, the Memphis underground rap scene. The Memphis rap scene of the mid-90s is believed to have carried a lot of occultic influence, and many believe that it was in fact many people participating in the 90s Memphis hip-hop scene were performing rituals, conducting occultic seances and whatnot, and these ideas,
we all about that witchcraft.
These ideas and this the occult is very much present in that culture and scene. So just to get into it, I want to just start by talking about Memphis itself.
Get into it.
Memphis is considered a fairly dark city. In fact, a quote I found by someone goes by the name Play a Fly, who was a part of this Memphis rap scene, was quoted as saying, "Memphis is a dark city. There's always been a dark cloud over the city. They killed the symbol for peace here." And he's referencing how Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis. And Memphis is considered to have like a very dark history, whether it's as early as genocides inflicted among local Native Americans, to brutal slavery that took place in Memphis, to Civil War battles and connections to the Civil War. Memphis is also considered the birthplace of an American version of voodoo called hoodoo.
Hoodoo.
If you know, Memphis is actually named after the ancient city in Egypt, Memphis.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. I remember that from Civ.
A lot of occultic practices have a lot of ties to ancient Egypt.
Right.
So in downtown Memphis, there's a building that many people think is like some obelisk to the occult. It is the Memphis Pyramid. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's now a Bass Pro Shop. It's pretty funny. Look it up. It's a Bass Pro Shop now. So it's just Memphis.
What the fuck? It just has a giant Bass.
It's a Bass Pro Shop. It was like originally supposed to be open as a sports arena.
Oh wow.
So yeah, Memphis, there's just something haunting
the Bass Pro Shop Pyramid.
Yeah, there's just something haunting and dark and bloody that lies within Memphis and its history. In researching this topic, I found Memphis to be a pretty fascinating city actually, and it sounded like a cool place to take a trip for like a haunted tour or something. It sounds like it's a fairly creepy place. So the rap scene and the hip hop scene that it evolved in the 90s is considered. It's also sometimes it's considered what started horrorcore, you know, which is like what ICP is, you know, and it's very a dark sounding music, haunting, atmospheric. In fact, a lot of the musicians, it's very lo-fi in style. Right. And a lot of the musicians would actually sample clips from horror movies and splice them up and put them into the backing soundtrack, like John Carpenter films.
There's actually an artist I've been listening to in recent years. His name is Clipping, and he does some kind of
no doubt he's influenced by this Memphis scene. Like a lot of this stuff. In watching this, I realized this hip hop scene has a massive influence to this. Probably because perhaps of the occultic powers that it summoned. The left-hand path. That gave it the power to have massive influence in the way it does. So
destroy the child.
So one of the most famous act probably from this scene is 3-6 Mafia.
3-6 Mafia?
Originally called 666 Mafia. Obviously, that's pretty obvious what that there is. And much of, obviously Juicy J's from 3-6 Mafia. I'm going to call them 666 Mafia for the rest of this. DJ Paul. But a lot of the original occultic imagery of 666 Mafia is attributed to a founding member, Lord Infamous.
What a fucking name, dude. Lord Infamous. I am Lord Infamous of the Memphis rap scene.
These guys, a lot of them have names like that. There's also some other musicians from this scene include HOH, which I believe stands for Halls of Hell. Maniac. Lil Ramsey, another Egypt reference right there. NOD, Niggas of Destruction. Psycho. And then there's a lot of DJs. Children of the Corn. There's a Children of the Corn. And then there's just like a lot of DJs out there. So a lot of these, obviously just hearing their names, like a lot of these rappers and hip-hop artists went into it like creating this dark imagery in their names, violent, gory, and of course like murder rap was already a thing. It's not like they started murder rap, but they went like full into it. Like there is no was kind of like other hip. ICP is influenced by this.
No, Ice-T.
Oh, Ice-T. They're all influenced by this. This scene has some crazy influence, and I believe it to be because of the dark powers they were able to tap into. Okay. And that those forces still resonate within the music. They put that out there. So basically, they were using their music. The idea here is that their music acts as it's very their music has a lot of references to Satan, very violent imagery, talking about being psychos going around killing things.
He's not the first. They're not the first musicians accused of using magic to help their careers. More famously, David Bowie.
Yeah,
David Bowie. Well,
David Bowie wasn't using this imagery as much as these guys were all about it.
Right.
There's tons of theories about the music industry and connections to the occult. This is like these guys made this. This was all like their main thing. They're named after violent things or named in a way to provoke darkness. Their lyrics are centered around that. Here, I'll read you some of the lyrics that from a Lord Infamous. I think this comes off 3-6 Mafia's original album. It's called Magic Styles, I believe. And Lord Infamous sings, it's a Mystic Styles. Mystic styles of the ancient mutilations. Torture chambers filled with corpses in my basement. Feel the wrath of the fucking devil nation. 3-6 Mafia, creation of Satan. Also,
goddamn.
Yeah. So this is like, that gives you a little bit of a taste of it, but so much of the music that was being produced in there, the lyrical content centers around stuff like that. Gangsta Boo in 3-6 Mafia refers to herself many times as the devil's daughter.
Love me some Gangsta Boo.
And as you can see here on the cover of the 3-6 Mafia album, there is an image, Mystic Styles. There's an image of one of the musicians. I believe this is Coopster. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what this guy's name is, but he's on a cross. He's on a cross there. Yeah, and the original idea was that, like, I read that they went out to shoot pictures somewhere in Memphis, and that they wanted to shoot pictures for the album, and while shooting them, they found an empty warehouse, and they walked in, and in the middle of the warehouse was men in hooded figures, cloaks and hoods and torches, performing an occultic ritual over an altar and sigils, and that they were performing an occultic ritual, and that this enlightened or turned on the members of 3-6 Mafia to a deeper underground occultic scene that has been existing in Memphis since the creation of the city, and that there's strong occultic, satanic and paganistic worship that takes place in Memphis, and that this Memphis rap scene, and the reason it's so dark and has so much of this imagery and talks about the occult so outwardly, is that many of the members in that, or many of the people that participated in, were part of the hip hop scene in this time, were also participants in the occult that took place there. So the greater idea here is that the music, the 8 tracks, because this is in the 90s, obviously it's recorded and it's placed onto 8 tracks, right?
Right.
The idea is here that these musicians had gone and used these 8 tracks as sigils.
Okay.
So just to explain what a sigil is real quick, in the performance of an occultic ritual, usually a sigil is used in order to direct your energy and at what you're trying to accomplish through the ritual. So in ancient times, like, you would use a sigil of, like, a demon. If you're trying to, summon a demon, you have the sigil of the demon there. It's supposed to be a reflection of what your intentions are, and so it's a way to channel your energy. So these sigils, it's believed, were created during dark rituals performed by the members, that some speculate that murders were committed in various locations around Memphis. These murders were recorded and then cut up and spliced together, and then in a ritualistic that these raps are them, either it's a form of worship or it's a form of ritual that they're doing as they record, and then they splice it in with the energy of the murder that took place, and then they've created this sigil. And the thing with a sigil is you have to charge it in order to have it manifest, in order to manifest what your ritual is trying to, the objective of your ritual. So when they passed these 8 tracks around and they were listening to it, people, whether they knew it or not, were unwittingly participants in charging the sigil. The fact that these were getting passed around and being listened to, it charged these sigils and strengthened the power of the rituals that the rappers did, that the hip-hop artists did. It strengthened the power of the ritual. So what their objective is it's up for debate. You could say the easy explanation is, they wanted to commune with the devil, or Ta was another one, the ancient Egyptian god Ta, or in order to gain power and success and fame through their art. Okay. Or this was just purely intentionally a form of worship, that there was no end. The end goal was the worship itself and the ritual itself. Okay. It's believe that this could be referred to as a type of chaos magic. Chaos magic being a style of magic that is conducted in order to achieve, like, physical recognizable results. Is that what
Aleister Crowley was doing?
He did all kinds of things. I think chaos magic it comes a little bit after him. Okay. Yeah. But, like, I guess sex magic, I think, is perhaps supposed to be a form of chaos magic. I'm not sure. Okay, sorry. I was just asking. But yeah, so they created these sigils, and put the 8 tracks themselves are sigils, but they had imbued with some type of mystical energies or mystical magic. So there's one wild theory that I've also heard is that what the purpose of these sigils is. This is really outlandish, but this is the wildest one that comes out of this, that these sigils somehow hold the location of the Nephilim.
Oh, that's a half angel, half it's like because it's a child of the No, it's like a half angel, half human.
Kind of. It's unclear exactly what the Nephilim are. They're from the Hebrew Bible. They're just described as very powerful beings. Mm-hmm. Some think maybe they're aliens. Some think they're a type of angel. Others, and this is a theory I want to cover eventually, because others believe that they're an ancient giant race that lived. There's crazy theories about giants. It sounds silly. They're insane. It's insane in a very fascinating way. The giant theories go deep. The giant theories go deep. We'll get on that on another time.
To be honest, I've been wanting you to do the one that you're doing now for a minute. I've been curious.
Well, the giant theories go deep, but some say that that one's obviously the most outlandish as to what the purpose of these sigils are. Like, I don't think anybody in the Memphis horrorcore scene really would have known that. One other thing that also this is is in connection to the greater Memphis area, but that also happened during this time, was these murders took place. It's called the case of the West Memphis 3.
Yeah, I've heard about that. That was the three boys, right?
These three, they were put on trial for murdering some 8-year-old kids. I'm not sure the exact number of 8-year-old kids. Basically, these kids, 8-year-old kids, maybe 4 or 5 of them, their bodies were found in a creek in West Memphis. And these 3 boys that were kind of like outcasts, whatever, like, their trench coat club of the time, were accused of these murders.
Real dorks.
And at the time, this is coming out of the 80s where Satanic Panic took place.
Right.
And at the time, the idea was that these murders were committed as a type of real ritualistic offering, sacrifice to Satan, and that these were accusations made in the courtroom that the West Memphis 3 murders was a ritualistic sacrifice. So some believe that the the Memphis hip hop scene had some connection to this. They have a greater connection to the occult doings, comings and goings of Memphis, and that they therefore had a connection to.
I forgot that had taken place in Memphis, but yeah.
Yeah, they had some greater connection to these West Memphis 3 killings of these children. So basically, that's about kind of where one thing I want to make clear also about the tracks is if you like go on YouTube and listen to them, or go on Spotify and listen to them, that is not the actual form of the sigil. The sigil purely exists in the original 8-track itself. Okay. So just listening to it on YouTube, you're not charging the sigil. I know I thought that I wanted to help 666 Mafia charge their sigil, but I tried, and it turns out you have to have the original 8-track, and because this is so long ago and this was so underground, most of them have been lost to time.
Right.
I was reading that they've been put on. They every now and then pop up for auction. Original. Okay. A lot of times, some collectors in Europe will go and buy them because they're just like, oh fuck yeah, that's dope.
Und we want a 3-6 Mafia album, the one that makes you talk to Satan.
Yeah. So, there's just a lot of.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Well, hold on. I have a few things to say about this one. So hold on, I want to just go over the ones that are considered sigils.
Okay.
I have them written down here. If you give me just 1 second.
Vamp.
Almost there.
Vamp.
Is this what is this?
Vampire.
Okay.
Cut.
So these are some of the 8 tracks that are considered sigils. So there is the self-titled album by NOD Niggas of Destruction.
Okay.
And that came out in 1996. That's an 8-track that's considered a sigil. That's been charged. And Maniac's 8-track The World of a Psycho, in particular his song Hellraiser, was considered where he imbued with the most of his energy and the most of the energy of the ritual that he conducted while recording this 8-track. Okay. Lil Ramsey's tape Going Undercover. HOH Halls of Hell. 1994 tape Living in a Casket. And Psycho's 1995 tape The Return of the Psycho. Also, so those are the ones that are hold on, I actually got a few more here. There's also Children of the Corns, single tape track Witch, as in spelled like Witch in the Woods, WITCH, Which Way Should I Go, DJ Fella, Niggas Don't Die Part 1, and Black Hole Posse, and a specific track here again, Mind of a Killer, off the album, the 8-track eerily entitled, If You Believe That They're Recording the Sounds of Their Sacrifices, Sounds of a Murder is the name of that 8-track.
Oh, well, that's on the nose.
So these are some of the 8 tracks that are believed to be sigils created as a device for conducting rituals, either just purely through worship or for greater success in the rap world. So getting back to like where this came from, because I found this to be really interesting, because in hip-hop you don't see, until lately, you don't see a lot of dark, I mean, there's, like I said earlier, murder rap existed, but you don't see them going, especially in 90s hip-hop and early 2000s hip-hop, you never see them get this dark, this straight satanic. Like, it's like black metal. It's like they're doing metal. You know, the only other genre that exists at this time that was like this occultic, this you know, out in the open with being like Satan is fucking sick, is like metal genres, and and then this Memphis underground scene, you know. So you know, it raises the question, you know, why is this taking place here? So I in reading a couple of interviews, because they've interviewed a lot of these guys from this scene, and just been like, what do you guys have to say about that? A lot of the artists just insist that it was kind of an aesthetic, and that that Memphis was kind of like a dark place in general, like I said earlier, and you know, I believe that like a place with a history like that, you know, attracts a certain type of energy. You know what I mean? You know, that places where traumatic events have happened leave kind of like a spiritual resonance somewhere, and the psychic resonance of traumatic events.
I mean, that's not that crazy.
Well, interestingly, this guy stated in an interview that I read, he stated that because we don't see stuff like, and I thought this was interesting, we don't see specific that this was purely a product of like a very insulated local scene, and that we don't see that this much these days, because as the world's become more connected to the internet, music has become much more homogenous and like, you know, streamlined. So like finding very niche things like this is harder, like local scenes having their real niche like style and flavor to them, and these guys have a very distinct style and flavor. This dark, menacing lyrics surrounding Satan and murder, lo-fi, that, and this guy in this interview, man, I wish I could remember who was saying this. Was it maybe the Play a Fly or one of the DJs that came out? I don't know. He said that he believes that a lot of this was kind of just a way of coping with living in Memphis. Memphis at the time, especially coming out of the 80s, the crack epidemic was happening and was affecting Memphis. It was a violent city. There's a lot of poverty there. And that this was almost an artistic expression of those fears and anxieties and life of living there, mixed in with the eerie, dark, occult history and undertones that existed in Memphis. So it was a response to environment, which obviously happens in every city, but because of Memphis's dark past and occultic undertones to it, that it mixed with like these hip-hop artists' expressions of the violence they lived in and around, and fears and whatnot, and it mixed in with this local Memphis flavor and penchant for the occult, and kind of created this very unique genre that would become Memphis horrorcore of the 90s. And, you know, this genre, eventually Memphis would kind of grow out of it and would become, you know, they would get in connection with the greater South, and, you know, trap would arise and crunk, and now we have things. But this genre's influence, I really do think that they did tap into some type of mystic energies. Because this genre's influence, you know, really most of these rappers are not known unless you go out and look for them from this scene, other than 666 Mafia. You know, so maybe their success kind of worked, their rituals and their sigils kind of worked, but the fame was fleeting. Or maybe the power existed in the music itself.
Oh, and it pushed out.
And it was able to push out. And you think about how horror and rap, at least throughout the 2000s, and when I was growing up listening to hip hop, it was about drug dealing and like
Eminem was kind of doing like horror rap.
Yeah, but like he was like, I don't know, he's a little different than this. He wasn't talking about Satan. It's just like it's a little bit different. You got to go and listen to it, and like it does not sound like Eminem. It sounds like Wu-Tang Clan became devil worshippers.
Hell yeah!
Like it's very cut and clear, and it's way more violent. Eminem's weak sauce compared to this. He's weak sauce. These guys go hard. They're all about the darkness and the violence, and so. Obviously, Memphis, it would kind of, become a part of the greater, southern rap scene. And, a lot of that in the 2000s and 2010s was just more about drug dealing. It kind of lost a little bit of that very dark, edgy vibe of occultic and satanic and ancient Egyptian gods and stuff like that. But now, modern day, you can look at how this influence still kind of permeates. Like, think about XXXTentacion and how he kind of incorporated dark, heavy, bordering on occultic imagery. Ghostmane is another example.
I'd say
Denzel Curry.
Oh yeah.
So
early Tyler the Creator.
I don't know him well enough.
Also, I would
Lil Ugly Mane.
I throw in Earl Sweatshirt as well. I throw in there's this one guy, Sadistic. He's kind of like in that lane. You can even kind of extrapolate to Death Grip somewhat. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Just with, kind of just a harsh...
So most of these artists you're naming, though, right now are considered contemporary rappers.
Right.
So what I find interesting is how much this very niche, very localized scene still kind of
reverberated.
It bled out and is now present in modern rap music, mainstream rap music. Like, because those are all well-known musicians for the most part, like fairly well-known. If you listen to rap, you know all those guys.
Right.
But this was a very underground scene. Somehow, the power that they imbued their music with, whether they were using this music as a form of ritual and an occultic worship, or that the music itself carried some energies that they imbued within it, the rappers themselves never gained maybe the mainstream success they wanted to, with the exception of 666 Mafia's Juicy J. But the energies and the music that was created did kind of leak its way into the mainstream and into the greater rap world to kind of become this thing that's present, which was once a time, decades ago, kind of reserved to just metal, Yeah. So I think it's really interesting how this very localized scene came up, and obviously, like, the rappers, and they will even respond to YouTube comments and stuff of that on their videos of people making these accusations and be like, hey, no, it wasn't like that. Like, this was an aesthetic and this was a response to our environment. And this is just how we expressed ourselves.
Right.
I, for the most part, take their word for it. I don't believe that there were any murders recorded on tracks. I think they're clips taken from horror films, and that this was I don't think most of them were devil worshippers or involved with the occult any deeper than it just being like something that they used artistically.
You know what? It's just hearing something like this makes me be like, man, like, like some kind of like folk story, or like kind of like tall tale, or some kind of like legend almost of just like, oh, did you hear that when was it, you said the 90s, right?
Yeah, most of this took place between like the early to mid 90s.
Okay, so it's like basically a manifestation of like early internet, it's not manifestation, it's something that couldn't exist with the internet, I feel like. You know what I mean? Like, because it's just like, we're especially like celebrities and rappers and all that stuff, that they're too exposed nowadays. to where a lot of times there's not a lot of them that try to maintain like a certain mystique,
I said, devil worship or like just satanic and dark imagery has become commonplace in mainstream hip hop now. SoundCloud and trap.
I mean, think about the most recent Lil Nas X video where he's grinding on the devil.
I mean, it's become like a mainstream aesthetic in modern rap.
Yeah,
but back then it was not. Go on, though. I'm sorry.
No, and I was just saying that this It just in a way it makes me sad because I'm like, it doesn't feel like a scene could gain this like kind of mystique and kind of like kind of mystery to it, and nowadays this feels like something that could only exist before the internet.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and I find that really cool. I like the I don't know. That's it's interesting. It's interesting. Who knows? Maybe they did murder. Maybe they
and
did
they
record
imbued the energy of the. Or if you know about the energy that's released in sex magic is considered argon energy,
right?
And same energy is considered to be released upon
death. Is it Gorgon?
Death. I thought it was Orgon energy.
I thought it was Gorgon.
Gorgon energy? I don't know. I don't know the exact pronunciation. But that energy is considered one of the most powerful energies. Right. It also is released upon death. Oh. And so that during their rituals, they would commit a murder or sacrifice. And they would have the 8 tracks like laid out in a pentagram or whatever. And then they would commit the murder, imbue the 8 track with this Orgon energy from the murder, and then proceed to record the whole thing, and then proceed to rap over it and mix it in with like their spooky tones. I'll play you some of it afterwards.
Okay.
Like it's a very it's lo-fi, which is really cool. It's lo-fi, but it's like very spooky, like, kind of like hard to describe, like almost like Halloween sounding.
I'm almost certain I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think it's a really cool scene. I learned about it. I'm into it now. If you're a fan of hip hop, check out some of this stuff. Just go on YouTube and type in Memphis hip hop from the 90s, underground hip hop. There's a lot of cool artists. It's a very unique genre, and something that wasn't common in hip hop for a while, and is perhaps communing with some dark forces, and you can get down and dirty with that.
Who knows? Man, that's a crazy. I didn't know about that at all.
And it makes me interested in not just the music coming out of Memphis from this time, but also Memphis in general, because the city itself plays a big role in creating this occultism there.
Well, like I told you, I definitely believe that an area charged with so much like spiritual resonance, or what would you call it?
Psychic resonance.
I definitely believe that certain areas get charged with a certain energy, and oh man, I sound like such a dildo saying that, but if a lot of bad things happen, like if you went to a concentration camp, I'm sure that place, even without like your knowledge of what went on there, it would still have an energy like it's like almost like a nuke went off there. It's like
it's like why a lot of places like hospitals and prisons that are abandoned are considered haunted. Like so much energy, so much death and unhappiness and suffering, and so much happened there that it left like a psychic imprint in the area that leaves it with this force of some kind. That's kind of cool.
But nowadays, something like this would just be a marketing tactic.
Yeah, well, I want to hear your opinion. Like I mentioned about how that this was like a response to the environment. Do you agree with that, or like what do you think about that?
No, totally.
Like, do you think this was purely just an aesthetic, and if so, like why is that their personal?
I think it was kind of like an attempt at like a countercultural type thing. You know what I mean? Create something that would get people kind of like all up in a tizzy. You just say it's real, and then you'll get the super reactionary folk who'll be like, oh my god, they're promoting the devil, oh gosh, whatever, over in Memphis, Tennessee. And I think it's also just like there's an aspect to it that if they live in a scary area, that you know, that their music would be a reflection of that. You know, they feel like they live in like a horror movie. That's why it's like kind of called horrorcore. Is that their life is a horror movie? You know, there's just danger and, you know, violence and, you know, drug addiction and, you know, it's just I definitely.
And for such an esoteric scene, their influence has bled into a lot of different corners, whether it's ICP to, you know, your Ghostmains or XXXs today.
Right. You know? Yeah, and you know, I think that you know, I like it as a kind of like, you know, like I said, like a countercultural type thing. I mean, because rap, you know, in the mid-90s was somewhat popular, right? But it hadn't reached critical mass like it has nowadays. So it was still kind of a niche genre, but to like have such like kind of like a niche subgroup within the greater hip-hop that's like, you know, filled with like menacing tones, but like not like in a like, oh, I'm gonna murder you. It's more so like, it's just more so like, no, this is a horror movie and you better watch out. 3-6 Mafia is coming.
Oh, they definitely said they were gonna murder you. All these guys did.
Okay, well, yeah.
They talked about murdering bodies in their basements.
It wasn't like in a like a gangster type way.
Yeah, no, this was like, that's what I find interesting. If like the music that was coming out of other various cities, be it New York or California, whatever, you know, it was like gangster rap, so they were like, yeah, it was like murdering you in a gangsta way, right? And like, you know, in like a hustle way.
No, this is like murder you like, so that I can fulfill a satanic ritual.
Yeah, there was like a more psychotic, more maniac.
And that's more, and honestly, in my opinion, that's more interesting. It's more interesting than what you get nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's really cool. I'm definitely gonna probably go back and listen to some of those groups.
Original 3-6. The place to start with this is 3-6 Mafia's debut album. At the time, they would have been 666 Mafia, Mystic Styles, and then you just do some YouTube browsing.
You know what?
Look up those tapes I mentioned earlier. If you're more interested in the subject, too, check out a documentary called "Welcome to Hell" about the Memphis rap scene of the '90s.
Nice. And if you want like kind of like a good representation of like modern Ghostmain, sure. Sometimes,
but they're all mainstream and have mainstream appeal.
Right.
Like, this is
what I would probably go for is someone like a clipping. Like I said, there's a song called "Nothing Is Safe." Check that out. It's very horrorcore inspired. And that's really cool. Who knew? Who
knew that the devil would be living
in Memphis
in the 90s?
Yeah. I know the devil went down to Georgia, but I didn't know that he stopped over in Memphis. All right, well, shit, man, that was some interesting shit, Zach.
Thank you. I was hoping it was. I was having a blast researching this one, and I found a new genre that I'm fascinated by, and I'm planning to get into more, and learned a little bit about a city that I just thought was like some bland, you know, southern city that turns out it has a lot of hoodoo and occultic and kind of weird stuff going on in there.
Watch out, guys. Well, you know, this is a good episode, Zach. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And we'll check you guys next week. We're out of here.
Thank you for listening.